Welcome to the Nonprofit Exchange Podcast. Stories by leaders for leaders to help you raise the bar on your own excellence, to release the potential inside of you. Now, here's today's podcast. Welcome to the Nonprofit Exchange. This is Hugh Ballou, and my guest today has a fascinating background and a real passion for helping leaders in any kind of organization. We're gonna be very specific about Scale Up Checkup and how it's of value to those of us leading charitable organizations. We like to say, Lauren, we like to say a for-purpose organization. We have for-profit and we have for-purpose. So if you would kindly tell us, who is Lauren Cohen, a little bit about your background and what led you to doing this particular initiative today? Welcome to the Nonprofit Exchange, Lauren.
Thank you. I will speak as loudly as I appropriately can without screaming. And thank you, Hugh. It's a pleasure to be on your show, and it's a pleasure to know you. And I'm excited about our opportunities together. So I'm originally from Canada. I moved here in 2001. I became a citizen in 2012, and I was doing immigration law and all types of corporate transactional work internationally for several years. And I kept seeing these recurring themes among businesses that were seeking to raise capital and foreign entrepreneurs or foreign businesses that were looking to come into the country. And the recurring theme was that they were really focused on, sales and marketing and getting coaching and moving up the ladder and making money, but they weren't so focused on getting a strong foundation in place. And unfortunately or fortunately, the reality is that you can't really scale your business or often even stay in business if you don't scale up your business. So in response to kind of this recurring theme, I developed this online risk assessment tool, which helps companies to find their missing pieces, their gaps, and fill the gaps so that they can scale up successfully. And it's equally applicable to nonprofits, because nonprofits need to scale as much as for-profits, because at the end of the day, we're all about making money. It's about where the money goes. That's the main difference between a for-profit and a nonprofit. And I feel that, as a social entrepreneur with social consciousness, I'm very focused on helping businesses to be able to scale up successfully without hitting all these roadblocks on the way. Not to say that they're not going to hit any roadblocks, but the roadblocks are going to be a lot more manageable, and they'll be able to respond to them more effectively because they'll have the right professional team and structure in place to be able to do that.
Awesome. So Russell, this is Russell Dennis, who's jumped on the call, and you can tell the difference between us because I have more hair.
Right, that's the only difference.
That's it. So Russell, you guys got snow out there in Colorado, didn't you?
A little bit. We've got a little bit out here. It wasn't a great deal, more in the mountains, but more about an inch or two here in Aurora.
Well, Lauren is jealous. She's in Fort Lauderdale area, and she didn't get any snow.
Well, I did. I think I mentioned I'm originally from Canada, so I grew up in Toronto, and I definitely know from snow. And I have a lot of good friends that are living in Colorado, and I do a lot of work with companies in Colorado, and including in the cannabis industry and outside of the cannabis industry.
So Lauren, tell us a little bit about more. You're trained as an attorney. What kind of an attorney?
I am. So I've been a corporate and immigration concierge attorney doing international law and handling international legal advisory services for longer than I care to acknowledge. I'm licensed in both Canada and the US, and have been working kind of with global entrepreneurs, speaking globally all over the world. I mean, you name it. I've been there, I've spoken in Europe and Israel and South America, obviously Canada, and the US even. Mexico. So it's been a really interesting ride, and I've always felt a calling to the entrepreneurial side of my psyche. As much as I love being a lawyer, and that training was great, I don't love sitting behind a desk. I love being with people and helping people and making deals happen, and like M&A, the mergers and acquisitions lawyers that are on Wall Street. I'm kind of like that type of mindset, but with my own clients and having a much more hands-on approach to working with clients and making sure that all of their moving parts are moving in the right direction. Because at the end of the day, there's so many different things that entrepreneurs have to deal with, and small business owners, and for not-for-profit and for-profit, and they just don't know who to trust and who not to trust. So I became this trusted advisor to these businesses on an ongoing basis, and so decided to turn it into a larger scale opportunity to help these businesses scale and grow successfully. And it's a nice system. It's called, I'll be happy to share all of the steps with you, but it's a nice system that really helps you to get your structure in place. You have a blueprint for success. It's kind of like a business plan for professionals, basically.
That's great. Do you have a volume control on your computer?
I do, and I have it all the way up.
Okay, so that's not going to help. We will. I will bring you up when I do the edit of this. So let's talk about the word assessment. And everybody uses assessment. I'm not sure any of us have a definitive paragraph or sentence that we can say this is what an assessment is. What is an assessment? Why is it important? And then why is it important, especially for nonprofit leaders?
Sure. So our assessment is quite different than a traditional assessment, because we are assessing various foundational issues, such as, do you have your corporate minutes in place? Have you set up your structure properly? Do you perhaps have trademarks? And a lot of these nonprofits are sitting on potential trademarks or licensing opportunities that they may be overlooking. Did you put a business plan in place? Do you have an exit strategy? Now, obviously for nonprofits, an exit strategy is much different, because you have to have an exit strategy in compliance with the IRS requirements. But it's a matter of looking at all the various components of getting your structure in place and making sure that your structure is sound so that you can scale and grow. What happens, Hugh and Russell, is, and you'll agree with me, I'm sure, I find all too often that these small business owners, these kind of accidental entrepreneurs, and there's certainly many of us out there, they came up with this idea and they suddenly grew, and they didn't pay any attention to the base. So to me, it's like building your dream home on a sinkhole, and suddenly the sinkhole collapses and your whole home collapses with it. Well, I'm there to stop that from happening. I'm kind of there to help you to get your business on a solid foundation and make sure that you're not building on a sinkhole before you start spending all this time, money, and effort to scale your business, because at the end of the day, you can only scale so far, and it's going to come crashing down if you don't have that foundation in place. So that's what we assess. We're assessing your kind of your foundational infrastructure, and we have a customized scored report that we provide, and then we have an analysis of what that score means and how you can improve your score so that your foundation is stronger. We also have a quiz that's a free that I'll share with everybody on the call. It's a freebie, a free online quiz that helps you to see initially kind of how committed are you and how committed is your business, because our mindset might be 100%, but our business might not be ready to match our mindset.
Yeah, a lot of people sort of mistake the assessment and evaluation and these type of things. They kind of look at it as, well, it's something I got to do to get somebody off my back, whether it's the government, it could be the government, it could be a donor, but, well, we're doing this because we have to. We really got work to do. And they talk about some aspects of their work when you ask them how they know they're effective. Oh, you can't measure that, is the response. How much of that do you see, and how do you address that when people come at you with it?
If you can tell me the answer to that, then I'll have the idea that's getting me on the front cover of Entrepreneur Magazine, which is where I'm going. But it's challenging, because what I'm dealing with, and when I go on stage, I often say I'm making broccoli great again, okay, which is always a laugh, because it's really about that. Like, what I'm dealing with is the broccoli of your business. It's not the ice cream. It's not the fun stuff. It's not the ... dollar. But at the end of the day, it really is. Because even for a nonprofit, helping you get your structure in place will allow you to get more donor dollars, allow you to have a stronger valuation, allow you to potentially grow your business more successfully. And at the end of the day, that adds zeros to your bank account. So my new messaging is actually all about show me the money, because at the end of the day, if you have a strong foundation in place, you will be able to see more money, no matter if it comes from donors, from buyers, or both, because certainly a nonprofit can use for-profit, like offer for-profit products and services and make money. It's just about what happens to that money. That's the key that separates it from a for-profit business.
You have a nonprofit yourself?
I do.
What's it called?
It's called Find My Silver Lining, and I established it in 2017.
And I assume you use this assessment yourself.
I did.
So when you talk about this, there's a strong element of enthusiasm and passion when you talk about this. Was part of the inspiration seeing so many people get stuck in the mud or walk into the wall or fall off a cliff?
Yeah, so what happened was in around, I want to say February of last year, I've been a part of this coaching program, and I offered to review some client agreements at no charge as a gift. And in doing so, I realized that there were many business owners in that program that didn't have all of their ducks in a row, let's just say. And many had been in business for many years. And I'm not saying that that's not possible. It's very possible. But once you hit a certain threshold, you end up, suddenly you're not a mom and pop anymore. And you could be a target, not just for the IRS, for nonprofits and for-profits, but for litigation, potentially bankruptcy. People see opportunities, people want to challenge you, you have a disgruntled employee, whatever the case is. So as soon as you're starting to scale, suddenly the target, your target becomes that much bigger. And I kept seeing this, and I was like, oh my goodness, these amazing business owners are exposing themselves literally to risk. And I thought there's got to be a way to address that risk and provide solutions. So ultimately what I'm building is like a home advisor or an Angie's List for business owners, including nonprofit and for-profit business owners, to provide a resource of vetted, certified professionals like you guys that can provide the range of services, the strategic services, legal, accounting, financial, insurance, business planning, exit strategies, pretty much all high-level, high-touch B2B services that they're just finding on the internet. And finding these resources on the internet is as bad as we used to go on in the yellow pages, and somebody would pay to get AA. I don't want to age myself, but we all know that we use the yellow pages. So the AAAA, so they would get to the front of that section, right? Okay, it's the same thing with Google AdWords. You pay, the more you pay, the higher you rank. So that's where they're going to get the most traction. Does it mean they're the best? No. Does it mean that they've been vetted? No. But because they're at the highest, ranking, you're going to call them first. And so I'm trying to be the antithesis of that. We won't talk about the companies out there. We'll talk about them, but not by name. The companies out there that are especially providing legal services that you have no idea what you're getting. I have a client now that applied for a patent in June. They didn't even know what a patent was. So no, there's no guidance. There's nobody holding their hand. And in what I've been doing for so long, I wrote a book called Finding Your Silver Lining in the Business Immigration Process. Everything's about finding the silver lining. And part of the reason is because to find the silver lining and, through adversity, my nonprofit is for single moms and single parents to help them find their way through the clouds and find their silver lining. So it's all about that, because in everything you do, if you have somebody to count on, a support system, and entrepreneurs and small business owners are often running on empty. We're running on our own, we're isolated, we're trying to do something, we're trying to have an impact, and it's very hard to have an impact without the support and without the trusted advisors around you. So that's what I'm building.
you're you're an attorney,
Yes.
and you look at things differently than the ordinary person. You look at it as part of a risk assessment because
That's a good way of characterizing it. Yes.
so you've seen people get in trouble
Yeah.
unnecessarily.
Absolutely.
So you're looking at the holes.
Yes.
We're looking at the donut. You're looking at the hole. We just see
Yeah.
we
Absolutely.
see the silver lining, but you realize that there's some holes we might step in. So what it dawns on me you're talking about is we have a corporation, either for-profit or non-profit, and that corporation is a liability shield.
Yes.
So without the right documents in place that people can sue you and come to you personally if they can pierce that corporate veil.
Very big deal. People don't realize that. They think if they have a company, they're protected, and they're not, because there's certain reasons and ways that they can come after you personally. Yes.
Well, there's certain
Have that shield. That's another whole dimension of problem.
so the compliance piece is recording your contracts, putting them in your corporate record book that your board has ratified these, your budget, yeah, any agreements, any expenditures. It's really about liability protection in the bottom line, but it's also about, you mentioned it would empower donors. And Russell, it would also occur to me that it would be we don't always protect ourselves from audits, but it would make us audit worthy if we had all of our records filed. So what are you hearing here, Russ?
Well, it's for me, the first step to building a high performance nonprofit is having that solid foundation. There are a lot of things that go in there. If you don't have the legal protection or the right structure, if you're going to grow, you have to have the right structure. And for nonprofit, succession planning is really critical too.
Big deal.
More so maybe than exit planning. I mean, everybody plans to operate in perpetuity.
Right.
That doesn't always happen, but to have a succession plan so that you know how things are going to flow, no matter who's in the building at any given time.
Right.
And so that structure really sort of sets a nonprofit up for success, mitigating risks. And I don't think a lot of nonprofits think about risk, but risk is there. You have financial risk, you have legal risk, just like with any other entity. And the thing that came to mind, actually, Lauren, was a question, because you deal with this so much on the structural side. We talk about it in terms of strategy, but we defer to legal experts, accounting experts. We defer to experts who have that critical knowledge in their field that'll keep us in compliance and keep us operating correctly. So when it comes to scaling, and I know a lot of times growth comes out of nowhere. I mean, you catch fire, you go viral, and all of a sudden you have all of this money, you have all of these donors, you have all sorts of people approaching you. When it comes to being prepared in this, what would you say that is the biggest gap that you see nonprofits have, or what's the most common mistake they make when they're at that point in time?
So I think so it's really common to both nonprofits and for-profits, although nonprofits are a little more guilty of this. And what I mean is nonprofits think that because they have this designation, they're kind of like immune from challenge, or they're litigation proof or something along those lines. And that's just not the truth. Like, they think, oh, nobody's going to come after us. We're a charitable organization. We have a 501c3 designation, whatever the case is. Why would they come after us? We don't have deep pockets. Really? A lot of them have deeper pockets because of the fact that they can't distribute the income to the shareholders or the dividends or whatever. And so as a result, there's a lot of nonprofits out there that are extraordinarily successful. United Way, Red Cross, a lot of the Jewish federations. There's a huge amount of donors. They're very large businesses. There's a colleague of mine in this coaching program as well. He runs a nonprofit. He came to the coaching program and he was looking to raise, I think, $2 million. Okay, that was his goal for the year. He ended up raising $20 million because he created this licensing program, his signature program, and sold it to other nonprofits, which is amazing because that is where there's an opportunity. So it's not that it's not just about assessing legal risk or legal vulnerability, but it's also about what about the opportunity that this presents to you? Like I was talking about trademarks, which a lot of nonprofits have access to trademarks they don't know about. So in my report, I talk not only about risk, but also about hidden fortunes, because there's a lot of possible fortunes that these business owners or in the nonprofit world, the executive director or the nonprofit board might be sitting on, that they could be making a great deal of money, giving back to the community, and at the same time really making an even broader impact. And I think that that's where that missing link is, because they don't think about a nonprofit as a business, right? They think about it as a charity. Okay, a lot of lawyers are guilty of this too. Lawyers and service providers. I was familiar with lawyers. Lawyers run their businesses and it's fee for service. So part of what I've developed is this professional resource success plan, which outlines all the professionals that are needed to fill all the gaps in your armor and to potentially help you to scale and grow. In there, we talk about mindset and coaching and opportunity and, you know, where do you want to go and your exit or your business succession plan. And you're super right, because every business needs a succession plan, whether it's an exit or a legacy or whatever the case is. And no matter what, in order to be successful at that, in order for a for-profit business to be successful at due diligence or a nonprofit to be successful at their succession planning, they need that structure in place, and they're just not paying attention to it. They're just coasting along and thinking about how much donor money they can get that year, and are they meeting their budget, and are their donors happy? And this is all great stuff, but think about the potential of greater impact if you're able to get those pieces in place and make that difference. I just, it's like basically night and day. And I think that for both of you, once we have the opportunity to work through this with some of your client base, you can see how much of a difference it makes, because it's basically like they're coming out, first they're coming out exposed, and then they're going back in, and now they're getting their hair done and their makeup, and, you know, now they're ready. Maybe they're not if they're a guy, but now they're ready to show themselves to the public, right? There you go. You're not getting too much hair done over there, Russell, but it's a completely different mindset. If I, you know, I hear a lot of entrepreneurs work in their pajamas. I could never work in my pajamas. I can barely wear sweatpants, even if I'm working from home, because that's not the mindset I want. I want to be in work mode no matter where I am. So it's just really important. And I think it's the same for for-profit business owners that are running as a sole proprietor. They're not looking at it as a business. They're looking at it as a hobby. And until you make that transition and look at it as a business, you're going to stay at a certain plateau. You may scale, you may make money, but at a certain point, you're going to eventually collapse.
Yeah, as you talk about that, and one of the things that comes to mind when you talk about opportunities and other things that businesses have access to, business revenue is the thing that comes to mind, and opportunities for mission-based revenue. You also have unrelated business income.
Yeah.
As far as it's money that's possibly left on the table because people don't really think about bringing a valuable service that they can do. When it comes to revenue generation and protecting your IP, intellectual property is very important. It should be separately maintained and protected. You know, everything should be walled off. That's a whole nother discussion. But when it comes to revenue, whether it's business related or unrelated, and you know, when you see organizations that have one or both, what are some of the biggest pitfalls you see them fall into?
So I think one of the things is that there is a limitation on, not a limitation specifically, but you still have to stay true. If you're a nonprofit and you're providing for-profit services or products, you still have to stay true to your mission at the end of the day. And if you start making millions and millions of dollars and using it as a sham so that you can pass through income at a tax-free rate, you know, or through the nonprofit so that you can get the benefits of that, or raise money to do advertising, that's where the problems happen. And like you said, the separation needs to be very, very, very clean, because at the end of the day, and if you start paying the executive director, suddenly they get a 100% salary increase, and the where's the money coming from? Where's the money going to? Is it just kind of, are you kind of circumventing the rule of not putting the money back in the pockets of the directors, but you're finding a workaround? That's where the problems happen, I think. Then there's also this issue, which I'm sure you guys are very familiar with, about fiscal sponsorship, right? And renting your nonprofit to another entity. Now, there are ways to do it that are completely legal and kosher as long as you follow the rules. But if you're just using your nonprofit as a sham or as a front for what you're really trying to accomplish, or for your for-profit business, you're going to lose your designation. I think it's simple as that.
Yeah. It's very important to put those structures up there. So you have to have a separate structure, especially for unrelated but related business income. In any event, with mission-based revenue, to make that test hold up, you have to make sure that the vast majority of those funds are going into your programs and operation of your nonprofit to keep from creating a tax event. Now, the unrelated business income, you file separate returns, and you pay taxes on that the way you do with others. In any event, what happens is people can get distracted, and people who approach your nonprofit can get confused. Do you find that nonprofits that are successful with generating large amounts of mission-based revenue, or maybe a substantial amount, it doesn't have to be large per se, but a good percentage of the revenue that they generate, do you find that they have difficulty getting donors because they see, well, they're making plenty of money, I don't need to write them a check?
Yeah, it's definitely a challenge. However, it really depends, I guess, on your mission and how impactful it is and how broad it is. So I think that what happens with some nonprofits, and this is what should happen, is that as they become more successful financially, their mission expands beyond their original intended scope, let's say demographically, or in terms of the people that they're helping. So, and there is room for that within the IRS code. So as long as that happens, then I don't see it as a problem. But as soon as that is not happening, or once there's a compromise of that, then it does create challenges.
I guess the key is the structure and making sure that everything is compartmentalized and appropriately reported. And so it's about the systems you have in place. In order to scale, you have to have really, really good, strong systems. And what are the ones that you think are essential for them to have first? If you had to set systems up in a specific sequence for nonprofits, what would that be? What sort of sequence would?
Operating systems are critical for any business. I don't care what business you are. You have to have an operating system for everything that happens from the time that you answer the phone until the time that you deliver the service, until after that is all the way through. Well, for the life of that relationship, you have to have a system in place for every single touch point that you have with the prospective donor, with the donor, with after the donor, with following up on the donor. What do you do if the donor moves? Everything. And you have to have operating systems for all of your internal processes. So they should be externally driven, one for all your outbound sales, so to speak, outbound touch points and all your inbound stuff. How do people work with each other? Who's responsible for the bank account? How many people are signing checks? What's the check and balance there? How does that all work? You know, every single thing should be documented. So it's amazing because when I started this, I didn't really realize how few businesses have systems.
Mhm.
The only systems they have are the systems that they pulled offline, and that's even kind of an exception, not the rule. And this is true of legal documents too, because everybody goes online and finds some legal document and they say, oh, this is a whatever it is, you know, an operating agreement or whatever. And it's just it's kind of like filling out the 1023, the IRS 501c3 application. Oh, this is easy. I can do this. It's just a bunch of forms and check boxes and whatever. If that were true, then there wouldn't be all these businesses doing that. It's very complicated. Even the 1023 easy form, you should not do that on your own because you need to make sure that you are following the rules and that whatever you put in there is going to be systematized within your organization. Because what happens when the executive director quits one day?
Well,
I'm sure this has happened to your clients, right? It's like, uh-oh, now what? So one of my messages is kind of about dealing with the uh-oh, now what? You don't want to wake up in the morning going, oh boy, what is going to happen today? I just cannot even imagine going to work and, you know, Steve is doing this and Joe is doing that and Janine is doing this and nobody's talking to anybody and we're not having group meetings and things are falling apart and the donors are kind of like frustrated and they don't know what's going on and they're going to move their money elsewhere because they don't even know if they're going to get their donation receipt at the end of the day. So it's a big mess and, you know, it's domino, right? One messy thing leads to another, leads to another. I wish it was true as true for the good things, but the messy things definitely have a more quick and efficient domino effect, right?
this is true. Yeah. But yeah, and a lot of what you talked about, we call them internal controls.
Yeah.
For IRS speak, we do. It's internal controls. How do you control who handles what?
Yep.
What you do, what's your record keeping like? That really gives you the scope of any audit that you do.
That's right.
The scope is going to based on the OMO. There are several things that are looked at very quickly. One is the corporate records.
Corporate records.
And I know you mentioned that. I'd kind of like to ask you to speak to that because as an auditor, when I walked into a corporation, I wanted the internal control policies. The corporate minute book was the first thing I refused. So could you talk a little bit?
Was this on the for-profit side?
On the for-profit side, yes.
Okay. So it's kind of though very similar because when you submit for a nonprofit designation, you submit all these bylaws, including one of the big ones is conflict bylaw. I can't remember the title off the top of my head. It's not conflict resolution, but it's
conflict of interest policy. Yeah.
My brain went dead. I apologize.
Yeah.
Conflict of interest. So this is so big in the nonprofit world. It's almost like insider trading. And in the for-profit world. And if you have created a bylaw and implemented that and approved that and ratified that and it's part of your corporate record book, and then you don't adhere to it, it's as good as sticking something up on the shelf or throwing it against the wall to see if it sticks. And this can put you in more harm than not even having that in the first place. So it's like you're kind of purposefully going around what you've implemented, and that's not cool. So your minute book, it depends obviously on your state because some minute books are more like Delaware is very strict on their minute book requirements and their updates, but you know Florida's a little less strict and the nonprofit requirements are that much different. But at the end of the day, you need to follow your policies. If your bylaw and policy said we're gonna have a board of directors meeting once a quarter, you need to have that board of directors meeting and reflect that and put it in the minute book once a quarter. Because if you don't, and you know, I'll tell you something that probably you don't know, and I probably shouldn't say this out loud, but if there are nonprofits or for-profit businesses out there that want help with their minute books, we can fix them after the fact, as long as it's before the auditor comes in. you just have to get everything up to date and in place. That's the important thing. Can't fudge it, but it's okay if you don't do it the very minute that you're supposed to do it, as long as you get it done. And so let's get together, call us and we can get it done with you so that we can make sure that you're not going to have a problem if the IRS shows up at your door or any other entity for that matter. Although today, I guess they're not coming so fast because they're still unfortunately on strike, or not on strike, but the shutdown.
Yeah. Well, the greater likelihood over the last few years is that a state regulator would come walking into your office because of the reduction in size. The money has been moved out of regulation. That's a whole nother discussion.
Isn't it?
But the bylaws, articles of incorporations these are things, and it's true with the 1023. There are certain things that you represent that you're going to do. And what the auditors do is they look at your books, they look at your bylaws. Are you doing what you say you're going to do? So I know there are laws out there, but we go by what you say that you state that you're going to do. That's a huge portion of what an auditor would look at as to determine if you're on track, if you're in compliance. Are you doing what you say you're going to do? So these are things that are important to kind of put on the table. And with good systems in place, and it takes a little time to do this, but once you have them in place, the operation smooths out. Am I on track with that?
Well, hopefully, but again, it's just like anything. You could have paper that's in a book or online, and then it's a matter of implementing and enforcing. So, I unfortunately, we are all guilty at some point in time of creating a policy. Look, I'm guilty of it with my child. The consequences are not consistent, and so his behavior continues from time to time. My fault because I'm not consistent in enforcing the consequence. Same goes for a minute book. It's the same concept. Like you can, a lot of people, just like setting up a nonprofit and using it as a sham, a lot of companies, unfortunately, put things into place just to cover their you-know-whats. And that's it. It's just, it sits on the shelf, or they do it just to be in compliance. But if they're not honoring it and adhering to it, whatever operating system or internal control or external control you have, it won't matter, because you can't just suddenly say, oh, well, wait, I have a policy for that, if you haven't enforced it for the past 3 years and the person's been doing whatever they've been doing, or they've been sending money to their brother's been sending them money or whatever. I'm being kind of a little far-fetched here, but the reality is that there's a lot of this that goes on. And as more and more for-profit businesses set up nonprofit entities, this is really an ongoing problem. And I think that it's all a matter of training at the end of the day, a lot of it. And if your people are not trained properly on what your policies mean, it's just only a piece of paper. So you need to have the policy, you need to create the manual, create the operating policies, create the training, train your people, get them to buy in, have them involved, and have consequences for non-compliance. So it's kind of a range of things that needs to happen. And have a third party designated to kind of oversee that process so that it doesn't all fall on the executive director to be the bad.
Absolutely. That's why you have board members and advisors.
Russell.
That's why we have board members. They really have fiduciary and governance oversight. So let's go back to this assessment. It sounds kind of painful and expensive. So what's involved if I wanted to go through the process and take the assessment? What's involved in doing the assessment? And then what do I get from that? And does it help me figure out how to do all of this? Because it sounds a little bit scary right now.
It does sound scary, but we don't let it be scary. I'm the non-scary lawyer. So I have a quiz that's actually free. It is not specifically oriented to the nonprofit world yet. We will be doing a quiz for the nonprofit world, and I think, Hugh, that you and I have discussed this, so we're going to create a special quiz. The quiz is free, and I'll be happy to share it with your listeners. It's scaleupcheckupquiz.online, scaleupcheckupquiz.online. And you can take that quiz, and it takes you about 2 minutes. It's fun, it's cute. And then we can set up a quick call to discuss your needs. The assessment is $47, which I can share a $20 coupon code. So basically that makes it $27. The assessment comes with a score. It's a customized score that kind of highlights your issues and lets you know how at risk you are, and also gives you access to my calendar for a quick call. The assessment and a strategy session is only $197, and that gives you time to go through the assessment results and talk about how they could be improved. How can you improve your score so that your bottom line is better? And the next piece, which is our kind of big ticket item, which is our big deliverable, the regular price for that is $997. However, Hugh, you and I and Russell can talk about a special delivery product for the nonprofit world, and we can get a coupon code because I don't want to charge that much for people that are in the nonprofit world. But it's a blueprint, and it shows you everything that you need to scale up your business successfully, all the people that you need. Then we create a strategy based on your budget and your priorities. So if your priority is to get a business plan in place because you want to build a facility, then that is the priority we're going to focus on first. But that's all going to come out of this deep dive analysis and success plan that we build for you.
Well, that sounds interesting. So it's the quiz, but anybody could take that. We try to convince those that are running, and it's really a bad word, nonprofit. It's a misnomer.
Yeah.
Those who are in a tax exempt enterprise, a for-purpose organization, that they're really, there's a high level of, well, it's very critical, let's say, that we establish good sound business principles. And if you have an organization, you should run it responsibly. It's good stewardship if nothing else. So the quiz, we could evaluate it as a tax exempt business, but where does it? It's Scale Up Checkup Quiz.
Checkup.quiz.online.
.online, and that gives them the free quiz. Then you fill out something, and then they get a chance for you to interpret it to them. Is that what I heard you say? Mm-hmm. And then the assessment could be available through Center Vision Leadership Foundation for people who want to find out how much trouble they're in. and then there's a prescriptive. You said this is what you do about it.
Yes. Well, not exactly. The prescriptive is more detailed in the success plan. The assessment, if they do the assessment with the strategy session, we'll give them some ideas and some tips of how to improve their score. But truthfully, it's really going to be the success plan that's going to give them a blueprint of all the things that they should do to get their structure more sound, so that they can accomplish their goals.
So there's your basic website is scaleupcheckup.com, scaleupcheckup.com, and we have that logo on the interview record. So when people come to the nonprofitexchange.org, they'll see your Scale Up Checkup, and there's a link to your site. And so there's everything that they need to know about the products that you just talked about, the assessment. There's a toll-free call. They can contact you, but it kind of, you have this branding, this purple thing that has an elegance about it. So that's
always been into purple. My existing brand has been purple. I actually, for as long as I've had a brand, I've had purple. Yeah.
So that's on your site, and so people can go to scaleupcheckup.com and they can learn about you. So what if we not asked you that people need to know about this whole line of really, it's risk mitigation, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, I think that the real question is, so what if I don't do it? Right?
Mm.
So So what if I don't get my stuff in place? What happens? How do I get caught? What's the risk? So there's huge risk, as Russell knows, having been an auditor. You risk not only for the nonprofit or the for-purpose organization losing your designation, piercing the corporate veil, as you mentioned, Hugh, which means they go beyond the business and to you personally. So you can lose your own personal assets. You put your family at risk. I mean, these are very serious issues that people just don't want to deal with. They want to deal with numbers and money. At the end of the day, numbers and money, this is going to get you more numbers and money than any sale is ever going to get you, because your sale is going to be stopped dead in its tracks. So all the time and effort that you've spent on making that sale will be stuck and unable to move forward because you haven't done what you needed to do. When you want to create a strategic partnership or a synergy, well, for example, you and I with Synervision, if we have a joint venture or a strategic partnership, we want to make sure that we both have passed certain due diligence, either with the compliance checks or whatever, that we have our business in place, that our licenses are kosher, that everything is right and everything is in place. Otherwise, I don't want to do business with you and you don't want to do business with me. And that's what these business owners are going to face. So they could have a multi-million-dollar prospect on the table. I have a client I was working with for a short time. They were about to enter into this multi-million-dollar project, this multi-million-dollar deal with a very big name. Big, okay? Big, one of the biggest. Not the biggest, but one of the biggest. I'm trying to see Russell's face, but I can't see it because his picture's small. But I think he's smiling. And so they were unwilling. They didn't have their minute book records in place. For 3 years, they hadn't done a single document. And because this company is so big and so successful, they wanted to see that all the I's were dotted and T's were crossed. Do you know that this company would not pay me to get their records up to date? It was like, I don't know, $5,000 or something like that. It wasn't nothing, because they just didn't want to deal with it. So they lost the deal. Multi-million dollars. And then they went back and said, oh, we'll do it now. And it was too late, because they could have had it done and they would have been at the table. This is what happens. You lose your seat at the table, that nice conference table behind you, Hugh. You're going to lose your seat at the table. You're going to have somebody come after you and sue you, whether it's a disgruntled employee. You're going to have the IRS after you. You're going to not have access to potential huge opportunities with your intellectual property. I mean, you're just putting yourself at risk every which way and losing out on potential opportunities to make a fortune. So instead, why don't we just have a conversation and see how we can help you to scale your business successfully and painlessly, and not violate your 501c3 designation or your company bylaws, whether you're for-profit or non-profit, for purpose. And I think there's a lot of for-profit corporations that are also purposeful. So I think that it's all confusing, right? Because I try to have a purpose and make an impact, even though I have a for-profit company. So there's just so many different ways that we could create opportunity for you as a company, you as a business owner, all of your clients to scale and grow successfully. It just seems kind of silly to throw that opportunity away because of fear of the unknown.
Yeah, it is. So this is really a huge inventory of important things that people really don't know to ask about. So Russell, before we do our closing sequence here, do you have any another issue we need to bring before this lady?
Well, I was thinking about a point that you made earlier, and I think it's worth emphasizing again. There are a lot of tools out there. People find templates and different guides to build contracts and build agreements with. Nothing wrong with them. The problem is that people don't have them reviewed by somebody that has the knowledge that's necessary to make sure that everything is in there to protect yourself with. And so just grabbing something. The other thing people don't do is they don't read the fine print in their own contract.
Yeah.
So they create something that they're going to adhere to if they don't have it reviewed. And they look at it with the eyes that, okay, this is going to protect us from other people. They may not be protecting themselves from themselves by say, what is it that we're agreeing to do? So how common is it that you see people with these boilerplate templates, and how can they get them reviewed? I mean, they definitely need to have them reviewed. Is it something that's going to break the bank? Because I think that's what stops a lot of people from doing that.
So thank you for asking that question. One of my signature speeches is the 7 secret scale up success strategies. And in one of the 7 secrets is don't download a boilerplate template from the internet, get it reviewed. Now, there's multiple reasons to have it reviewed, some of which you addressed. Also, they could name the wrong parties. They don't know who's who. They could pull the wrong template. It may be a perfect template, but not for the right situation. They might think they need X and they need Y. It could be covered with a bunch of legalese that nobody even understands, even the lawyers. You know, I wrote an agreement last week. It was actually a nonprofit agreement for a lawyer. Okay, I was working with this lawyer, and I wrote that he said I want it to be 2 pages. This was the lawyer telling the other lawyer that he wants the agreement to be 2 pages. I go, that's just not possible. I can make it 4. But he's like, I'm like laughing. I saw him last night. I'm like, 2 pages? So it's just so funny because we're really trying to condense things and make them more concise, because if you get lost in it. So no, it's not, I can't give you a flat fee. However, we do have packages that include a whole range of services, including review of up to, I think it's 5 agreements of up to 10 pages each. And we have them on monthly, like not 5 agreements per month, but we have monthly packages, we have semi-annual packages, we have annual packages. And really, you just need to grab one of those, not go to some of those online services, but actually have somebody that you can trust, somebody that you can contact, somebody you can text, a live person that can help you to actually look at those agreements and see what's missing or see what's not. You know, what's missing is almost as bad or often worse than what's not missing. You're not going to catch everything. No lawyer's even going to catch everything, because I don't know exactly what every single business owner wants to accomplish. But if you don't have it reviewed, you can't, you know, you're pretty much putting yourself, like, you may as well jump in the ocean without a life preserver.
Well, this is really, really helpful information, Lauren. Thank you. I'm gonna do a sponsor message here. Then we're gonna come back to you for what's a closing thought or tip for people. What do you want to leave people with? And then Russ closes out our interview. This is called the Nonprofit Exchange. So if you go to thenonprofitexchange.org, it'll lead you to CenterVision Leadership Foundation's online community for community builders. It's a place where nonprofit leaders all over gather. We have forums for discussing these topics that are controversial. We have years and years worth of these interviews with really important thought leaders, and the different levels of membership I'll talk about, but you'll have this one in there for a period of time. And then with different membership levels, you have more and more content. There's a place for you to ask questions. There's a weekly Q&A at the higher membership level. So there is a place that you can convene with other nonprofit leaders so that you know you're not alone and that other people have the same kinds of questions that you do. And what I'm taking away from Lauren's interview today is there are things about running an enterprise that we don't even know we're supposed to know. Our goal at CenterVision Leadership Foundation is to bring you data so that you can be a better leader, because your organization can only improve as much as your ability to lead it there. So nothing happens until we develop the skill set to take our organizations not to the next level, but all the way to the top, the best it can be. So Jim Rohn used to say, work on yourself harder than you work on your business. Our constant motto is work on self, work on self, work on self. We build teams and we build organizations. And through that, we build revenue streams. Then we have experts like Lauren on our ancillary team that can be our advisor when we need somebody like that. So if you go to thenonprofitexchange.org, you'll see this interview and the one that was last week. You'll see a button where you can look at all the videos from previous interviews, but at the top of the page, there is a button that says join. And so you join the community. There's a gift for you. You can join for free. You can join for $9.95 a month, and it gets you a whole lot more content and ability to be on the forum with other leaders like you and talk about those difficult subjects even in the middle of the night. And then at the top level, it's $47 a month, and you get huge discounts on continuing learning programs to help yourself stay ahead of the curve. You get special webinars, and you get this time with me every week, Thursdays at 3 with Hugh. So there's lots of benefits at the different levels, and it's an investment in your future by investing in you. So if you go to thenonprofitexchange.org, you'll see today's interview, but at the top of that page, click on join, look at one of the offers, and you can change it up or down later. So get in there, there's some free stuff for you, so you might as well get it. thenonprofitexchange.org. So Lauren, what thought do you want to leave people with, or a challenge or a tip?
Think about your nonprofit or purposeful for-profit business or purposeful nonprofit business, charitable organization as a business. Look at it, take it seriously. It deserves your attention. It deserves the attention of professionals. Don't try to be everything to your organization. Bring in the professionals that you can trust to accomplish the goals that you need. And I'm available to speak with any of you about how to scale up your nonprofit. And I look forward to working with you guys, Hugh and Russell. Russell, pleasure to meet you and collaborating with you further. I think we're on to something great here. So don't take the risk of losing all that you've built because you're afraid to make a phone call or send an email.
Well, thank you, Lauren. This has been a really enlightening and uplifting conversation. And here at Center Vision Leadership, we have all sorts of people like Lauren that are here. You can get this podcast and other podcasts at the iTunes Store or on Stitcher. So come join the community and have a chance to plug in, hold conversations with people so that you're not doing things by yourself. Center Vision Leadership Foundation is your source for all things nonprofit. If we don't have the answers, we know people like Lauren who do have those answers. And so until next week, we do have a webinar coming up in a few hours where he was going to talk about this 5 pillars of success. You want to be here for that. Be here again next week at the same time, 2 p.m. Eastern, Nonprofit Exchange, where we will bring you another thought leader who will talk about ways that you can build, scale, grow, and protect what you're doing so that you can go forth and be helpful to more people. The better your structure, the better your systems, the more people you're going to serve. And the big secret about scaling up is that it's no secret when you talk to people like Lauren. I'll see you all next week.
Thank you.